Yes, we are live. Okay, hello everyone. This is Misha Houston. Welcome to my channel. Tonight we are discussing Bran 4. Would y'all like to make your introduction?
Hey everybody, I'm Lady Wolverton, Jen. Really excited about this chapter. A lot of information. So, all right.
Hey, it's Bran the Builder. I'm all over social medias, Twitter, Amino, WordPress, YouTube, you name it, I'm there. Find me somewhere.
Hello everyone. This is Misha Houston. You can find me on YouTube on this channel. You can also find me on on what's the name of it? Facebook and Instagram. And you can find me on the Capcom Fighters Network under the title Misha 3700. Tonight we're doing Brand 4 and he's over at Winterfell. He's he's home at Winterfell and he's awake and he's realizing his situation. Now,
Yeah.
Bran, it's your night to do this. Do the
Yeah.
overview. So the
Okay, well, to do a quick overview of what's going on here on Brand 4, we start out, he's Rickon, he's running with the dire wolves, and, he's getting frustrated that he can't. You got old Nan there with him, and, he has little discussion with her for a little bit. Then Hodor and Mr. Lewin come and get him. He goes down. Tyrion has showed up. Tyrion's bringing back John's request, to help him in any way he could. So he's there. When he shows up in the main hall there, Robb is greeting him with the sword across the lap, and that's basically showing that no, we're not giving you guest right. We're not going to allow you to be here. We're going to deny you. And but then Tyrion does his normal thing, goes ahead and gives him the saddle diagram and stuff, and helps him out in any way he could. Robb realizes that he may have overstepped his bound a little bit, and he pretty much apologizes. Well, then later that evening they have the feast, and they find out about Uncle Benjen and how he pretty much is lost. He's probably not coming back, and Robb, doesn't want to admit to it or anything. And we end with Robb carrying Bran up to his bed, and just reassuring him that everything will be okay. Now, like Jennifer said, there is a lot going on in this chapter. I started taking notes, but there was so many going on that I just kind of gave up after a little while. I figured I'd get some and I'd play off what y'all got.
I've got some good notes.
From the very beginning, I noticed one of the first things is I think it foreshadows the direwolf's deaths. It tells us right off the beginning. It says Grey win first, Shaggy Dog second, and Summer last. When they're running around with Rickon. I think it's basically foreshadowing that, hey, this is the order they're going to die in later on. It also, where'd my notes go? I flip pages here. Hold on, sorry. But it also says that Summer is the smartest and can see all there is to see. It's already telling us if the characters parallel their direwolves, then it's already telling us that Bran's going to be the seer that can see everything.
Mm-hmm.
And something I noticed that I think they said in the show, Old Man says all crows are liars.
No, it's in the book as well.
That's not how it's phrased in the book. It's crows are all liars. It's phrased differently, and I don't know if that's going to if that necessarily plays a part or not. But I noticed that it is phrased differently. It's not the all crows. It's crows are all liars.
No, she says all crows are liars in the show.
In the show, yeah, but in the books it says crows are all liars. It's phrased differently. Yeah, That's something that stood out to me immediately
Yeah.
when I read it. That, wait a second, that doesn't say all crows. And probably the biggest thing I've been stuck on for all week since I saw it is Old Nan blatantly tells us that everything is going to happen again. She says these aren't her stories. These are stories before her and after her. She straight up tells you that they're going to happen again. I mean, that
Here's
the
the
old
quote here.
long night and everything is going to happen again.
My stories? No, little Lord, not mine. The stories are before me and after me and before you too.
Yeah, she blatantly says that the stories are before her and after her. That her stories have happened and they're going to happen again. And if you notice, the ARE is italicized, which I found another interesting italicized thing in another part too that is coming up. Let's see. It says she's the oldest person in Winterfell, probably the Seven Kingdoms, which is true. I mean, the only other person that could be at an age with her would be Bloodraven, and he's not part of the Seven Kingdoms. He's north of the Wall. But the Maester who?
Maester Aemon is old.
Oh well, yeah. Good point.
Man, no doubt. She may be the oldest.
Good point. I didn't think about him. You very well. He may be older. He may be, but that also goes with the ice preserves. You know, they're both people of the north. The north is what the ice has preserved them. Is what how they said it. But then when they start talking about when Old Nan came there, she says she showed up there for Brandon Stark, who is either Lord Rickard's older brother, or the father, or his Lord Rickard's father's brother. And if you notice that Lord Rickard isn't italicized the first time, but the second time when it's talking about Edwyle, his father, his brothers, that's italicized there, kind of giving us a hint that that's the Brandon we should be looking for. That's the Brandon that died, that she showed up for. He gives us little hints with even the italicist as to what he's doing. I mean, everything he does in these books is for a reason, just about.
We also find out that Nan had a child named Brandon.
That's another thing I wanted to point it out, because I actually that was my next note here. It says her Brandon, but it also, if you read it with the structure of a sentence in mind, I mean, the way it's wrote, it makes you think that they're saying her Brandon is this infant. But if you look at it with the strict structure of a sentence in mind, it's a list. It's her Brandon, then the Brandon that died, then the Uncle Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good catch. I'm glad you caught that. I think that's about the end when I gave up on my notes.
Well, we also find out for sure. It says that that isn't Hodor her great? Is it her grandson or it's her great grandson, isn't it?
I think it said grandson, but I'm not 100%.
It says in the chapter specifically what Hodor is to her, and Hodor is not her child.
No. It's definitely either grandson or great grandson. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say hello to Ashley of North in the chat, Amanda Kane, and Stacy Smith, Jules Elizabeth. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We're talking.
Thank you, Stacy. Stacy says it's specific. I meant to write that down and I didn't. Specifically, Hodor is her great grandson. We also find out, of course, we know now where Hodor comes from, but remember that was a big mystery before, when everybody, because his name is actually Walder.
Mm-hmm.
In the show, it's Willis in the book, I think.
No,
it's one of them's backwards. I mean, it's Walder and Willis.
It's Walder in the books. I wrote that down.
Okay, my bad. That was my bad.
Cool. It's easy to get that mixed up when you're so into both of them.
Yeah. There was one note that I had, well, not written down, but kept note in my head. is that as Bran was listening to these stories about Bran the Builder and Bran the Breaker and all of this, he started to believe that maybe Bran was all one person, and all these different brands may have been one person doing all of these things. And
well, it does say.
Me,
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Don Willie's video, the Quantum brand, the Once and Future brand, I think. And check that out on Don Willie's channel, everyone. I think I'll put the link. And he has a video that he believes that brand, is all one person. All these different brands who did all these different things were all just one person throughout the ages. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Egyptian reincarnation theory. Like if you come back, you don't really die, you just live a different version of a life. So that's kind of, in my opinion, like a nod to reincarnation. Could something like that happen in the Game of Thrones? Could you not so much die but come back as a different version of yourself or a different person, depending on what kind of life you led, whether it be a good life or a bad life?
Hinduism. Yeah.
Nan certainly gets, I'm sorry, Bran. Nan certainly gets them melded together, because how that gets brought up is Brandon is very upset that he sees Rickon and Rob and the wolves out there running around and playing, and he wipes away a tear, and Nan's like, would you like me to tell you a story? And he's all like, I hate your stupid stories. And Nan says, you want me to tell you the story about Bran the Builder? That was always your favorite. And it says, thousands and thousands of years ago, Bran the Builder raised Winterfell, and some say the Wall too. Nan thinks it's his favorite story, but it's not. Sometimes Nan confuses him with her Bran or his uncle Brandon. And that's not my favorite. My favorites were always the scary ones. Oh, my sweet summer child, old Nan said quietly, fear is for the winter, my little lord.
Right.
When snows fall 100 feet deep and ice winds come howling out of the north. Fear is for the long night when the sun hides its face for years at a time, and little children are born and live and die all in darkness, while direwolves grow gaunt and hungry, and the White Walkers move through the woods. You mean the others?
Well, yeah, the others are certainly coming back. No doubt about that.
We get a lot of information about the others in this chapter, and then right when we're getting into a really good story, they get interrupted.
Yes, interrupted.
And it's Tyrion Lannister.
Please stop interrupting, Jennifer. Please don't take offense. Just stop interrupting, please.
Wait, what?
I'm talking to you.
We all do.
Interrupting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We all do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Who yet? Where are we at?
Yeah.
Oh, I did notice that.
Go ahead.
The broken boy's wanting to climb the broken tower. He keeps mentioning the broken tower where he feeds the crows. That was something that stood out to me as well. He actually mentions the broken tower he wants to climb. Feed the crows. I think that just the broken aspect parallel is pretty prominent in the chapter itself with Tyrion and Bran and the broken tower, and just the crow tricked him, he says.
Yeah, he's always talking about the crow. Now, I'll be right back. Go ahead and talk about this. I'll be right back. I need a break.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. What were you saying there? Oh, with old Nan's stories, I started numbering them because I was going through them because I wanted to pay more attention to them because I'm positive they're going to play out in some way or another.
I agree. And I think, just like oral history that is passed down, some of what old Nan says is not true, but a lot of it is just taking oral history, the tradition of oral history.
I think most of her stories are going to play out in one form or another. I mean, because she straight up says these stories are before me and after me, and we all know that Old Nan is pretty accurate with her stories. Her stories are pretty much, you can take them to the bank because they're pretty accurate. And that's the first story she mentioned was she knows a story about a crow. Then she knows a story about a boy who doesn't like stories. then it was Bran the Builder, and then we get the story of the Long Night. And so I don't know if those are going to play out or how exactly that's going to play out, but I figured I'd be conscious of those as we go forward to see if I can catch those along the way.
Absolutely. I think they're important. We start to get some really good narrative about the last hero and the Long Night, and then Maester Luwin comes and announces Tyrion Lannister's presence and how Bran is won, and it's completely interrupted.
Yeah, and where was it? Oh, and it says one thing I want to bring up is how do we know that the others aren't affected by iron or just regular swords? It straight up tells us that they are afraid of iron, fire, the sun, and anything with hot blood running in its veins. We never once see another hit with a regular sword, so we don't know if a regular sword will affect them or not. We just immediately assume.
Well, this is probably.
Why would they be afraid of iron?
This is probably jumping the gun, but for some reason, when I read that, what it evoked in me was for some reason thinking about the Veil and Bronze. Jan Royce. How is bronze mixed exactly? Do you know the properties of that?
No, not right off. No,
I don't look either, that up. But there's something to.
It's a lot weaker than iron.
Runes.
It's a lot weaker than iron.
Yeah.
I thought it really weird that the others feared iron and that made me automatically think about the crypts. The iron long swords across the laps of the people in the crypts. If they're afraid of iron, could that iron be keeping an other in place or something? Something to that effect. Not necessarily that exactly, but
about the swords across the knees in the crypts as some kind of binding.
Binding, exactly. And if these bindings stop the others, who's to say?
Right.
Which, my theory is that the 79 Sentinels are actually in the crypt. So, that the Winterfell was the original night fort. So, I think that plays a part right there.
I think perhaps somehow that gets, because remember when Bran, before they leave Winterfell, Bran and Rickon are down there and they take several of the swords. I think that's going to come into play.
But it also says that some of them were rusted away, so that the vengeful spirits should already be walking the grounds anyway.
I think that's going to come into play in some kind of way, shape, or form.
I think so too. I think it's going to be. Wait.
Go ahead, Misha.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
That she may be mistaking the iron for the Valyrian steel.
No, I'm not.
No. Old Nan.
Oh,
not you. Not you.
No, I think Old Nan may be mistaking the iron, the metal that the others are so afraid of for Valyrian steel. That may be the metal she may be mistaking it for.
You think? Because I noticed. It specifically said iron, fire, sun, and anything with hot blood in its veins, and that's why I was thinking. We don't actually have an account of an iron sword. We see Waymar Royce fight one, and the sword breaks after a while, but it never actually hit the other. So we don't know if the other, and I can't think of any other instance where iron actually touched another. So I was wondering, Could it be that we just immediately assume that it's only Valyrian steel and not iron itself? Because we don't have any instances of it actually being, as far as I can remember. I mean, I may be wrong there. It's been a while since I've gotten the older books.
Yeah, there was a lot going on in this chapter here. Lots of for such a, it's always something going on in Bran's chapter.
I know.
I mean, he's the first one we see, besides the prologue, and he's certainly going to be a very, a critical player in this game. I mean, he's so young. For one thing, he's just so young.
Yeah,
And,
it does say he gets his 8th name day. Passed.
He's 8 years old, and that is so young. I mean, to have so much going on with him at such a young age, in and of itself, besides all of the things that's going on around him. I mean, he's pretty strong. He's pretty strong for 8 years old.
I think we get so much information from his chapters because he is going to be the seer. He is going to be this. He's not going to be a green seer like Bloodraven. He is a green seer, but he's not going to be like the last green seer. I think that title is specifically for the Bloodraven. I've come to the conclusion. I think it's going to end that Sam is writing it, but Bran is narrating it. That's why he's not going to be the last green seer. I think that's why we're able to get everybody's perspective, because he can see beyond the weirwoods now. He can see from perspectives, and I think it's going to be Bran narrating everything and Sam writing it all down.
Ashley has a comment. She says, was it not iron chains used by Jon to restrain the white he kept in the ice cell at the wall?
I don't remember. I would have to look that up.
That's a good catch, though. We need to double check that.
Can somebody look that up real quick?
Because they do specifically mention iron, and it just makes you cha-ching.
Yeah, it's easily looked over because everything's iron, and you don't necessarily think about it. But when you stop and slow down and really study the chapters like we are, it stood out to me because, I mean, Old Nan would know the difference between Valyrian steel or iron. I would think Old Nan would know that difference, and then all of a sudden she says iron specifically is a deterrent of these others. It made me consider, is there any other instance? And I can't personally think of any, but like I said, it's been a while since I've read some of the older books. So,
yeah.
Can I bring up this?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the story that she's telling him before they're interrupted, she starts to tell him about the last hero and the long night, and she says, he set out into the dead lands with a sword, a horse, a dog, and a dozen companions. And of course, we've already seen a little taste of this in the show, but I definitely think we're going to get this in a kind of a reenactment. It's kind of almost like everything we see in the past kind of repeats itself in some way or another. And I think we're going to get something similar to this. Until he despaired, he's in search of the children of the forest in their secret cities. One by one, his friends died, and his horse, and finally even his dog. And his sword froze so hard that the blade snapped when he tried to use it. And the others smelled the hot blood in him and came silent on his trail, stalking him with packs of pale white spiders as big as hounds.
Right.
And that's what
I think I can't decide if we're going to have an exact parallel to that, because if you look, we've got a lot of instances of a last hero figure. Waymar Royce was the last hero figure with the sword stabbing way beyond the wall. Bran has a last hero journey. He set off with the dog north of the wall in search of the children. Jon's probably going to have a last hero journey. I don't know if we're going to have one specific or we're going to have multiple parallels to the last hero. That I don't know. I've contemplated it. I've bounced both ideas back and forth. I can't decide if we're going to have exactly one or if we're going to have multiple like that. Just pieces of this person, that person, this person.
Well, I mean, to me, it kind of nods towards, the big excursion, in the season with Jon going off, trying to pull a White Walker, before the wall, so to prove it to everyone that the White Walkers exist. And
Right.
He says the guy went, the hero is John, the dog is the Hound, and a dozen companions and stuff. Jorah would be the sword, Danny's sword, and a dozen companions. The rest of the group that went. So it kind of had me thinking about that when I read that.
Me as well.
Yeah, that's why I said brought him up as a parallel as well. I didn't know because he went and searched for the children, not the others. That's why he has part of the Last Hero parallel, but he isn't like a full parallel to the Last Hero. Like even Bran has parts of it. Waymar had part, and there's others as well along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's going to be a combination of these characters to be to fill the whole parallel, or if it's just one in particular that we haven't seen yet.
And there's one more thing that I didn't quite understand why the people of Winterfell, Robb included, were so cold toward Tyrion. Well, now, do they know about the mess that happened down the King's Road already?
No, they. I think they still assume that the Lannisters are behind the whole Bran incident.
Yeah, but I think that was never, brought up, was it? Was it brought up?
Yeah, they. That's what, because Catelyn's already gone at this point.
Yeah.
Catelyn's already went south. Yeah. But they don't know. They don't know Tyrion himself. That's why they didn't immediately throw him in chains. They know they suspect Lannister, but they don't know Tyrion was behind it supposedly.
Mm-hmm. But I thought it was very clever of Tyrion to ask Bran, "Do you remember kind of what happened when you fell?" But
it also was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, because
I'm interrupting now.
He was also sniffing for information around Bran, for the sake of his brother and sister.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like to me. It seems like he makes himself look suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does, because he says, you Starks are hard to kill. Mm-hmm. That does not look good.
Yeah, and then Robb says to him specifically, very snappily, because Robb is, he's barely contained in the fact, he's not being courteous. He's outright rude to Tyrion, and Tyrion presses on, and it to me, he makes himself look very suspicious. Mm. And then he says to him, even after he says, "I don't remember anything," and then Robb snaps at him, "My brother's not here for you to question."
Right.
And kind of puts it into it.
Yeah, he came with that special saddle, but he also came looking for information.
Yes.
So yeah. Another nod to the duplicity of the Lannisters, how they're hiding behind a false front. They come in with these gifts, but they have an ulterior motive as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
it also shows Tyrion's intellect too, because he's not necessarily just looking to cover up for the Lannisters. He's looking for information in general too. He's not saying. He's not trying to save his own hide or his sister's and brother's hide, but he's genuinely wanting to know what's going on. At the same time, but he would cover it up if he could, because he is the Lannister.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then right after that, the direwolves come in, and then they are acting all suspicious. That one night, nips at him and rips his scarf or whatever, rips his shirt, and so that doesn't look good on him. But that's when Robb changes right in that same time frame, he gives him the saddle diagram, and so Robb changes his stance when the direwolves kind of come in and would have leaned it towards the other side, but it's really complicated right in there, how the emotions going back and forth.
At the beginning of the chapter, we also get a statement that says the crow had tricked him into flying.
Yep. Yeah, so I brought that up when
he's already started what the crow considers flying. So he has already done it.
Well, I actually, when I was going over the chapter with Jules earlier, I brought up that because in the dance, it specifically says Bran is already flying. I don't know why everybody thinks he's going to warg a dragon or do something like that, because he's already flying. I mean, it specifically says that.
But that's why I'm saying, like, I noticed definitely, it's a statement given to us. It's not, is it going to happen or whatever. It's, he has already done it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, too, I always weigh in on the horse situation. Bran is on a pony before the accident. And a pony is not just a very young horse. Ponies only get to be 14.2 hands, which is 5'2" from the withers, which is kind of the in between the head. Then the saddle goes here. That's the withers, with kind of like the hip bones of a horse. So just wanted to throw that in there because I always talk about horse stuff.
See what we got going on here.
Okay, so Tyrion gives the saddle plans. Robb is being rude. The direwolves surround Tyrion, and the Black brothers stay as guests. But Tyrion says that the inn or whatever that he saw in Winterstown will be enough for him, and he might even find somebody to warm his bed.
Now that I think about that, I kind of find Tyrion a little bit hypocritical, because he's telling Robb, spare me your false courtesies, but he's being false himself as well.
Yeah. That just adds to the complexity of Tyrion.
Yeah.
I mean, he's so many people's favorite character, but he's really a shitty guy once you get into the later chapters.
Yes. Tyrion is a very dark-hearted character, more dark and sinister than he appears on the show. They whitewashed Tyrion on the show. They made him so
likable
and funny, and he has the humor aspect in his chapters, but that humor is very dark, and he has a very dark mind and a very dark mindset, and he is nowhere near what he is in the show. They've completely whitewashed Tyrion Lannister. I just think about it. He's talking about having his own nephew raped. He's talking about raping his own sister. He's
not a good character in so many ways.
Definitely.
But the show is angelicized him to the point where he's just this perfect guy that supposed to be ushering in the democracy or whatever it is.
Yeah, and those unfunny, silly jokes that they had him tell when they were in Marine right before the Battle of that whole.
Yeah, you're right. They definitely, not only in his appearance, but also in his demeanor and his little, they make him the funny sidekick. And if you go back to the first season and you look at Tyrion, even his hair is very light. In the first season, they try to really change the way he comes across.
Mm-hmm. And they could have made him blonde and put him like some honey highlights in his hair. But that first season Tyrion was more like Tyrion than it ever was in those other seasons. And sometimes in the show, when he was talking to Cersei, he would have that darkness in his eyes. But he never really. Peter Dinklage is a wonderful actor.
Yes.
I'm certainly not putting him down because he's just fabulous.
He is great in 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri.
Yeah, he just is just I don't believe it's his fault because he's acting what he's given, and I don't have any complaints about his acting. I just don't think that he could be the dark Tyrion in the books, but they're not casting him that way.
Ooh, nice catch, Ashley.
Yeah. Yeah.
She pulled it up in A Dance with Dragons in page 906. He says he would need to burn them eventually, no doubt. But for the nonce, they were bound with iron chains inside their cells. John thought when he asked what to do with the corpses. And she says, so they were corpses, so the corpses hadn't turned yet. Wonder if the iron prevented them from turning. That would that would actually make a lot of sense, a lot of damn sense. I mean, that would explain the iron across the knees of the Starks and them not changing. And wow, good catch, good damn
thought.
catch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Ashley. That's great. That's what I said. Yeah, that sentence stuck out to me about iron because, we definitely haven't seen anybody in a fight with a regular sword really get the jump on a White Walker. Certainly not a White Walker, maybe a white.
Right. The others are a totally different breed, though.
Okay, so then we have this dinner.
Yeah.
And they're talking about John, and they say Alistair Thorne's Bane.
So Alistair Thorne was there, right?
No, he wasn't there, but when they're talking about how John is getting on at the wall, somebody comments that John is Alistair Thorne's Bane.
Yep.
And in the show, he literally is.
Oh, is he? Yeah. Is he there?
Well, no. He's literally the Bane of Alistair Thorne. He's the one that kills him.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, Alistair Thorne, just chose different paths, on how to rule and how to lead people. And he sees people more responding to John than him and his tactics, and he was totally threatened by John. He's always been threatened by John.
John's more the leader type.
Yeah, John has the heart that Alistair doesn't.
He's resentful of this little kid right from the beginning, because if you really look at it, this is, a well-seasoned man, and this is a boy of 14, and he's extremely resentful of him and makes it very hard for him. And his resentment seems to go a little bit deeper, even than the fact that their families fought on different sides in Robert's rebellion.
Yeah, the Targaryen. Yeah, what side was he on? The Targaryen side?
Yeah, he was on the Targ side.
And that's how he ended up there at the wall.
Yeah, that's how he ended up at the wall. Yes, and Alistair Thorne. Even though I just felt like once John got there, he knew he had become irrelevant. Even though he was a leader, even though he was respected, out with the old, in with the new. And by the time he left the wall, in a dance of dragons, I think he finally accepted it. He accepted it and just went on beyond the wall, letting John take over.
That's a good point. I think his, because how sometimes people of certain classes or whatever, like, you get like Alistair Thorne. We know that not too many people of an upper class come to the wall voluntarily, which I think already sets, if you come up there voluntarily, I imagine you kind of consider yourself a little bit above anybody who is sent there as a prisoner. Mm-hmm. So we've got Benjen, who went voluntarily, Waymar Royce, Sam, technically, even though some could argue it wasn't really voluntarily, but you've got and Jorah Mormont, but you've got Alistair Thorne, who as a knight does have a high place at the wall, but still he can never really wipe that clean, the fact that he's not there of his own free will. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that bubbles up inside of, really just a resentment he can't let go of, that bubbles up inside of him again and again. And he's not really hard on any of the lower class people who were sentenced there, because he knows instinctively he thinks he's better than these people, period. But John brings up feelings in him of like, I'm not. So the only thing he can do is constantly call him bastard. We know he gives him the name Lord Snow, which is very embarrassing to John at first, and he hates when people call him that and whatever. And, that was like somebody being a dick, like, okay, Lord Snow, That's some high school stuff right there.
Because he's scared of him. He's scared of him. That's what it is. Scared of what he means and what he can do, and afraid that he'll lose what he has left, because he really doesn't have much left. He's at the wall.
Right.
There's really nothing there. There's nothing there but death. I mean, I kind of feel sorry for the ones in the show, because we know they're going to be the first ones hit by the White Walkers.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's really nothing there. And here comes John, being John, the brooding hero.
Something else we see a lot of in this chapter is the transformation of Rob from the Rob the boy to Rob the Lord. You know, you see back and forth a lot. You see, you know, you want to see Rob the kid, but when Tyrion shows up, he's got to be Rob the Lord, and he's there with the iron across his leg. And then, you know, when they're having the feast, when Benjen's brought up, he's in denial. He reverts
Yeah.
back to Rob the kid, but then, you know, he goes back to Rob the Lord. Then he carries Bran up to bed, and it actually ends the chapter with Rob crying as well. So, you know, it reverts back to Rob the boy.
Yeah, Rob
I
is
mean, you
is
see a
very
lot.
much. He gets so upset when somebody says, one of the younger Night's Watch people, they're recounting the story to him of what's going on with Benjen, and they said he goes out looking for Waymar Royce and he never returned. And one of the younger Black brothers at the inn says he's dead. And Rob stands up and is like, "No, he's not. He's the first ranger. He knows those woods back and forth." And Yoren kind of chills it out and is like, "Well, that's maybe, you know," and goes into that. After and Bran blurts out, "The children will help him."
Mm-hmm. And is that this chapter? No, that was another chapter. Sorry, I'm doing quizzes on other chapters, and I getting those mixed up here.
Well, if I may divert the subject just for a second, I kind of want to talk about Maester Luwin in this.
Okay.
Maester Luwin took the paper from the dwarf's hands, as curious as a small gray squirrel. Now, squirrels, you know, squirrel away nuts to prepare for the winter. And
Nice.
Maester Luwin, as he's taking the paper, he's taking the information. And that's exactly what maesters do. And that's exactly what the Citadel does. They take information and keep it away. In the show, they said that the Citadel is like the memory of Westeros and the memory of the world. And that's exactly what Maester Luwin is doing. So when they called him a squirrel, when Bran, you know, compared him to a squirrel, you know, that kind of reminded me of the Citadel and how they take information and how they write everything down and keep everything organized. They take reports from all over the continent, all over Westeros, and they keep it and they squirrel it away. So, I mean, so that kind of, I thought that calling him a gray squirrel was very accurate. And I didn't see it as an insult. It's kind
Not
of
at all.
what they are. That's what they do. And Maester Luwin does that a lot. He does that a lot of those maesters do it. They did it in the show and they did it, you know, in the books. And I kind of can't wait until we get, you know, to the Samwell chapters, because
I know
he's gonna make his way to the Citadel, and I would love, you know, to see the Citadel through someone's eyes. I mean, we see a little bit of it in A Feast for Crows, you know, with the Pate storyline and so forth. But I really, really would want to see the Maesters and what they are up to in the Citadel.
Me too. I love Sam. Him and Sansa are probably my two favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I missed the little nod there to the squirrels, you know, packing or, you know, storing away for the winter. That's a good catch. Good catch.
And I wonder, you know, what kind of information have they stored away for the long winter? You know, they judge winter, they judge the seasons, and they keep records of everything. And I kind of wonder what kind of information could Samwell run up on while he's in the Citadel that could help them through the winter, help the continent through the winter. I mean, we're certainly going to need some help in Westeros because it seems like so many people are flocking to Westeros now, especially in the later books and those sample chapters that we get from Winds of Winter. I'm not gonna make give away any spoilers, but it just feels like I would just want to know what they are doing in the Citadel in regards to the winter time. What kind of information do they have? What secrets are they keeping? What kind of information are they getting? What are they sending out? What will they do for the
Yeah.
people when winter comes? Will they get involved in winter? Will they be a part of it? Or will they stand back aloof?
I wonder what kind of preparations they're making. I mean, we see Sansa kind of making preparations in the show, and we saw the Citadel this year, but we didn't really see them, talk about anything like that. And they just the people at the Citadel, the initiates, what are they called, acolytes and
Acolyte, yeah, acolyte.
yeah, just their students and whatnot. Must be maybe even a couple thousand people to feed and tend to and whatnot. And, like a big university. So it makes you wonder what they're doing in preparation. And you would think that they would be some of the best people, best preparers, because they have records and information on how to prepare.
If you take the show at its standards, they expect the wall to hold and never, nothing to worry about.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what the Maester Ebro says.
Yeah, and I kind of thought that they really took a frivolous stand in regards to the show when it comes to the Citadel. They were very frivolous and very uncaring. But if they were true maesters, if they were true healers and true educators, as they should be sending out messages to everyone. Telling they should. I mean, the Citadel should have been much better than it was in the show.
Well, the Citadel's got its own motives and motivations. I mean, that's the Grand Maester conspiracy. You've heard about that, and
yeah.
I mean, I've found other things that I think the Maesters are involved in that one day I'll get wrote up.
Yeah. When they got to the Citadel, I was really looking forward to that, but they really didn't do a good job, there. I don't blame Samwell in the show for leaving because he wasn't really learning anything.
Yeah, it's just so rushed at the end here. I mean, they put such a slow timeline in the first 4 seasons, and then they tried to rush everything at the last, and it just doesn't work well.
It did feel that way to me watching the show. I mean, you're getting, whereas before they're just creeping along, and then all of a sudden it's just like boom, 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 boom. So much information.
They ran out of the minor details that Martin has filled in. They ran out, and they didn't know what to do. Which I'm going to say it now, and I hate to even admit it, but I think we're getting a lot more information than we want to admit with this show. A lot more information we realize.
Yeah.
And for me to say that's saying something, because I'm a book fanatic through and through. I've spent way too many years into the books, but I think we're getting big, major key plot points through the show that we don't want to admit. I mean, the Jon and Dany, the Aegon, him being King of Winter, I think those are all going to happen. We're getting a lot of one of the dragons dying. I'm not sure how that's going to be handled. I don't know if one's going to die, but I mean, I'm in the opinion Euron's going to get 2 dragons. So, I mean, that's just me. And I mean, I think that we're getting a lot more through the show than we want to admit. Us book fanatics, us elitists.
Well, I mean, I kind of don't. I'm happy that they didn't, give Winds of Winter away, and I don't want them to give it away. But my thing is, if you're gonna go your own route, make sure that the story is just as beautiful and just as well told as it is in the book.
Yeah, the continuity.
Yeah. And they just failed at that. They failed at that.
Yeah, they definitely failed at the continuity aspect. I mean, you've set up a nice timeline to it. You can't just break that to rush it out the door. I mean, there was easily another 4 or 5 extra seasons worth of material there that they already had, but they trying to rush it out the door. And my opinion is they should have handed it over after the Red Wedding to the next set of showrunners.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that the Red Wedding, is something that's going to happen later on in the book. But I really didn't have a problem with it so much as some of the other events.
That's where they started messing up, in my opinion. That's where it started branching. Because they had the story wrote up to the Red Wedding when they, everything started. They didn't really have anything broke past that. That's where I think they should have handed it off, because they didn't have anything planned after that.
That's true.
Okay.
We're discussing Bran, Game of Thrones. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat right now. We're happy to answer.
Something else, it really shows Tyrion's pragmaticism throughout it. I mean, he this is like the second or third time in this chapter he says that if that's not true, then I'm not a dwarf. He's real. He understands the way things work in the life they live. The lifestyle, the time period they live in. I mean, he knows he's a dwarf. He knows that that's not going to change. He accepts that. Like he tells Jon, you're always going to be a bastard. Wear it as your armor. He tells Bran, you're a crippled. I mean, face facts. He's very pragmatic about everything that is involved.
Yes, he is.
But and let me kind of differ with you a little bit. And I'm not saying that you're wrong, but as far as Bran goes in that situation, you can't really expect for him to be so pragmatic.
Right.
He's only 8 years old here, so I can't blame him, for his reaction.
Yeah, I'm not. I wasn't really even touching on Bran. I'm talking about how Tyrion is very pragmatic in his approach to everything. He's very, this is how it is. It is what it is. It's not gonna change, so we got to deal with it. I mean, Bran, I completely agree. His reaction was justified. He's a child still. He doesn't want to accept the fact.
Like, have you guys ever heard like somebody who is born blind maybe deals with it better than somebody who goes blind because they never had a taste of it? So Bran, grew up as being a perfectly formed little lord, and then all of a sudden he's considered a cripple, which we know how people view that. A lot of people are like, might as well put the boy out of his misery. Now he's pretty much in this class of forgotten people. And y'all, okay, at the very end, we have Robb take Bran up to lay him down, and Bran goes, are they ever coming back? And at first, when you read that, you almost wonder, is he talking about the others? But then it's apparent in the chapter he's talking about his family, or at least that's where the conversation goes. And Robb says, yes, and we'll ride out to see them. Won't they be surprised to see us a horse, to see you a horse? And then we'll go to the wall to see Jon. We won't even tell him we're coming, you and me. It will be an adventure. An adventure, Bran says wistfully. He heard his brother sob. The room was so dark he could not see his face, so he reached out his fingers and they twined. And when I read this, I'm thinking, I think Robb realizes, like, after everything that he's just taken in, what I really thought of in this instance was, how people speculate over who Robb left as his heir? I really think he's crying because he realizes how much danger Jon is in. And, not only that, but the culmination of everything. His brother's accident, all the family being gone pretty much, the weight of his new responsibility on him. And he just kind of breaks down for a minute. But I also think he realizes, well, shit, if Uncle Benjen, who has been up at the wall, more of his life than not is missing. You know, what about John? And it makes me think, like, when John sends that letter off, Rob sends that letter off, that who has the letter, and he names his heir. I was thinking back to how Rob hated the Lannisters, so he's going to bypass Sansa and who he names his heir. But I think this also shows just how much regard he does hold John in, because I really feel like he really breaks down, like, just thinking about everything. But also, I think he misses John and worries about John more than he has let on, and he hasn't really thought about it up till this point because he hasn't had a free minute to think about it.
That very well could be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Even though it would have, Catelyn would have hated that.
Yeah, she would have.
Would have hated that. But
I almost. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but I think that she may have maybe understood it. In an attempt to block the Lannisters for getting their hands on Winterfell. Even though I think she may have understood it, knowing about the marriage. If she had lived and knowing about the marriage, I think she would have been okay. If as long as a Stark would have had Winterfell and not the Lannisters. I think she would have hated the Lannisters more than Jon in that moment. And it really also shows how everyone's kind of putting up a false front and how they see that things are changing now. Things are very much, they realize how good they had it. And now everything is starting to crumble now. Everyone's leaving. Some people are dying. One of the wolves is going to die. And so forth and so on. Things are crumbling little by little. And in the dark, when they're holding each other's hands, they're trying to keep up that false front, but they're just crying. The two of them are just crying and seeing that things are not going to be the same ever again.
Yeah.
It was another, little minor turning point in the story. Some of the turning points are very obvious, but this one was very obscure. But you could see that this was a turning point for the two of those characters, for Rob and for Bran. And it was just a turning point for the Stark family itself.
Yeah,
it's definitely.
Like they're both trying to hold on to something that really doesn't exist anymore. And it's just all kind of culminated at the very end of this. And Bran cried earlier. And now Rob, his older brother, the one who's in charge, breaks down. And I never thought about it so hard as I did when I did this reread. But it's really heartbreaking. We get a lot of information. We get a lot of bits and pieces of information in this chapter, and then we really see Rob is just like. I'm sure you guys have been through it when this is going on, and all day you've had the worst day and you've wanted to break down, but then something major happens and you can no longer just kind of hold on to that facade of everything's going to be okay, and you have a little meltdown. Lord knows I've had one. Lord knows that's happened to me before.
Baby Rickon is crying. But, seeing as he's the youngest, he has much less of a filter than the others. He's crying openly. Cries openly and say, are they ever going to come back? Every time somebody leaves, he starts crying. He sees it too, even though he is the youngest of the Starks. How old is he here? Maybe 3?
Yeah.
3, maybe 4.
4 years old, and even he, so young, is sensing things are coming to an end. For him, his happiness is coming to an end so very early. All they've ever really known was the good times at Winterfell. It was cold.
Summer.
It was here, the nice summer. And now everything is falling apart.
We also get another Bran dream in here, a sequence here. In his dreams, he climbed again, pulling himself up the ancient windowless tower, his fingers forcing themselves between blackened stone, his feet scrabbling for purchase. Higher and higher he climbed through the clouds and into the night sky, and still the tower rose before him. When he paused to look down, his head swam dizzily, and he felt his fingers slipping. Bran cried out and clung for dear life. The earth was 1,000 miles beneath him, and he could not fly. He could not fly. He waited until his heart had stopped pounding, until he could breathe, and then he began to climb again. There was no way to go but up. Far above him, outlined against a vast pale moon, he thought he could see the shapes of gargoyles. His arms were sore and aching, but he dared not rest. He forced himself to climb faster. The gargoyles watched him ascend, their eyes glowing red as hot coals in a brazier. Perhaps once they had been lions, but now they were twisted and grotesque. Bran could hear them whispering to each other in soft stone voices, terrible to hear. He must not listen, he told himself. He must not hear. So long as he did not hear them, he was safe. But when the gargoyles pulled themselves loose from the stone and padded down the side of the tower to where Bran clung, he knew he was not safe after all. I didn't hear, he wept as he came closer and closer. I didn't. He woke, gasping, lost in darkness, and saw a vast shadow looming over him. I didn't hear, he whispered, trembling in fear, but then the shadow said Hodor, and lit the candle by his bedside, and Bran sighed with relief. That's an interesting dream sequence, because you get the lions in the tower, and he didn't hear. What didn't he hear?
I mean, yeah,
that's what.
Oh yeah.
That's what got his attention in the first place, was hearing them. That's why he went and investigated and found the Lannisters, or found Cersei and Jaime up there. He heard them in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a neat.
When he was
he remembers, he just doesn't remember.
They say perhaps once they had been lions, but now they were twisted and grotesque. That's certainly the Lannisters. That's certainly the Lannisters. And it's very interesting, the human mind. The human mind is trying to tell him what happened.
Exactly.
It's clear. Yeah, it's not clear to him. He hasn't figured it out yet. And he's going to have other dreams about climbing. He's going to be dreaming throughout this whole book. And it's just not clear to him yet. He can't interpret what he's seeing, but it's exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened.
Also, Tyrion has been compared to a gargoyle from the outset of our story. So he's not gonna, his imagery is already a gargoyle. So maybe he'll actually turn into the lion.
I mean, it's certainly possible. He's still alive in the books. He's still here. So if he is still alive, there's certainly hope for him. There's hope for him. Perhaps they had been lions. That was so Lannister. He just ain't put it together yet. And I remember a scene where he was sitting, with Maester Luwin, learning about the houses and the sigils and their mottos and things like that. And what's the Lannister mottos? Hear me roar. Roar like the lion. The little clues are there, but he just hasn't put it all together yet. And I hope that he does remember in time. He's remembering so much, he's learning so much, but he's kind of being erased as well. His own memory and his own thoughts is being replaced by something else and someone else as well. And I just hope that, he doesn't lose himself like he did in the show. He's still very much Bran in the books. He's still Bran all the way up until they get inside that tree. And I'm hoping that they don't erase him too much and turn him so much into the three-eyed crow or the three-eyed raven that he doesn't even remember who he is now.
Yeah, I don't see that. Honestly, I don't see that happening. I think he'll be, like I said, I think he'll end up being the narration of the story to Sam. that we are reading, basically. I don't think he'll.
Anybody else find it interesting that Bran said Rickon had to be reminded multiple times that Ned had died? And she goes on to say, I've always suspected Rickon didn't forget. I wonder if he continued talking to Ned's ghost in the crypts after that first time, and that's why Rickon is so comfortable in the crypts when everyone else is terrified.
And then that's another thing. We really don't get much into Rickon. I'm hoping that they do something for Rickon. You know,
I can't decide what he's going to do because we get the Shaggy Dog perspective, the Shaggy Dog story, but I've also got a totally opposite story if the name translation is right. So I don't really know on him.
Let's go into that. What's the name translation?
I translated his name, and basically it says he's going to be a good ruler. I mean, he's going to rule, and Rickon, I would have to look exactly. Give me 1 second. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, I mean, as while he's looking it up, I'm hoping that they give us something for Winds of Winter. Give me something for Rickon. I mean, I don't even know if they're gonna do the Davos chapters. I'm hoping that they do those too. I mean, give me something for Rickon.
What do you think, Misha? So are you just hoping that they give something for Rickon, or do you think that they're going to? You know, because George R. R. Martin has admitted that sometimes when too many people had figured out something, he would change it. And I wonder if he will give Rickon something.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if he only gave one chapter, then that's fine. That would be fine if he just gave me one chapter. He's done that, you know, before in the Dance with Dragons, just giving one chapter for one character. He did it in the Feast for Crows, only a few chapters for one character.
Yeah,
that'll be fine. I mean, just give me something.
Just give you some kind of point of view.
Yeah, give me an update on what's really going on with him, because we don't get that.
Sorry.
Yeah, we don't get that, and I just want to. Yeah, just give me something for Rickon. Give me something.
When I broke Rickon down, I actually had to break it down into 2 words, or RIC and CON. RIC is Old English for complete ruler, powerful ruler, or peaceful ruler. And CON is Old German and Latin for hound, wolf, brave ruler, and horn. And, you know, so obviously, you know, the wolf, the hound, and horn even can be played into the part, but the complete ruler, the brave ruler, the powerful ruler, that is the exact opposite of what the Shaggy Dog story would be. So
yeah, Kaun in German means bold. I mean, and Rickon, you know, for someone his age, has a lot of wildness and boldness in him.
Yeah, he does.
From what I saw in old German and Latin, it was hound, wolf, brave ruler, and a horn. So I mean, those all play into a part in the Winterfell story, the Horn of Winter, and you know the Northern storyline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much.
And then the bold and that actually may have been bold instead of wolf, actually.
Yeah, so much symbolism, you know, going on throughout these books, and you can find something, little nuggets, you know, hidden everywhere, in the fruits, in the spices, in the food they eat, and in their names as well. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't believe the Skagosi are cannibals. I believe they're actually green seers, and that's why Osha took Rickon there, because we see in the Varamir chapters that the wargs and green seers, they need training. Varamir needed training, so they took him to whoever that was. I can't remember his name. So I think she knew that he was a skin changer, a warg, so she took him to be trained by the Skagosi. I think that's why he's at Skagos. I wrote up a paper about that too.
Okay.
Yeah, but Wex could be lying. Wex. when they
Lex could be lying.
Lex could be lying. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I hope. I mean, I just want Rickon to be alive, and that's really my main thing. I want to see him alive if I can.
Yeah, I think he is alive. I think he's on Skagos being trained in his green or his warring abilities, and I think that's why I said I think the Skagosi aren't cannibals. I think where we learned the from the Varamir chapter that eating of flesh in your warring form is an abomination. I think that's basically what the cannibalism is, them eating a human in their animal form. And I think that's why they get the cannibal moniker, and then they just play to it. They don't deny it, basically, and they keep their green seer abilities hidden, their warring abilities, skin changing abilities hidden from the world, basically.
Well, we're gonna have to see about Rickon for sure. Any questions? Yeah, any questions? Any questions? Please post them now. Thank you, Alicia, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Cammie. House Sanchez, thank you so much for joining us. We're discussing Bran, and this is a heavy chapter for us here. This is a lot. This is a whole lot going on in this chapter.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, we could spend hours on this, and we're just now scratching the surface.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could make a whole thing about what old Nan said. Mm-hmm. You could make a whole thing about Bran's dream. You could make a whole thing about what the Night's Watch said, and you could make a whole thing about what went down with Tyrion and the dire wolves, and I mean, so much you could basically get an essay out of, just different little sections in this chapter, which is what I noticed when I read it. You could break this chapter down for a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, way more. Excuse me. Way more Royce. He was mentioned.
Yeah.
So, that takes us right on back to the prologue and what happened with him. And I've noticed, they talk about meat a lot. Meat between the teeth. And that certainly reminds me of the wolf. I mean, the fact that Bran is zeroing in on people, eating meat and having the meat between the teeth, just kind of reminds me of the wolf part of him. How he would like to, how a wolf likes that, how the wolf likes to hunt and find the kill and tear it apart with the teeth. I mean, it really shows a little bit about Bran and his wolf aspect coming out in him. And then, Bran is also thinking about Onan and the others, the last hero, and what that is going to entail, the children of the forest. That's something that's really huge and very prevalent later on in the books and in the show. Mm-hmm. They talk about the wolves themselves. And
Sanchez wants to know what you got in your cup, Misha.
I have water in my cup. Water. And tap water. That's all.
I have lemonade.
My throat is dry, so I'm just drinking water. That's all it is. It's not a drink.
Thank you, Alicia, for stopping in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking about Bran, and Bran is just it's a lot here. Maybe a little too much if you catch my drift.
Yeah, I mean, you could really do hours upon hours on each little subject here. Mm-hmm. I mean, that branches off. Right? We're trying to combine it all into one little thing and one little 2-hour segment, and at the same time, it's just so much that is involved. I mean, we could literally break it down into each character and how their roles play out. I mean, we've tried touching on everybody, even like Yoren. I mean, he's very straightforward and to the point. Benjen's good, but he's probably dead. He's seen better men go off into the haunted forest and never come back. I mean, but at the same time, he's being kind of soft with Robb. He's not just being an ass about it.
Yeah, I'm reading a little bit about Theon Greyjoy. Now, Theon Greyjoy, is a character here.
Yep.
We're gonna see him later on, much later on in the story. And it's just, kind of strange him just standing around in the background. He's kind of a character that I would have forgotten about. But
In
come,
this,
yeah, but come,
I'm agreeing.
yeah,
Sorry.
and come to find out, he's gonna have one of the most amazing storylines ever.
Hmm.
So I mean, good.
One of the most detrimental for sure.
Hmm. Especially when it comes to Bran and Rob and that whole section. Especially later on. In the next book, if I'm not mistaken.
Theon, I was honestly, truly, when I was reading the story, even though his protestations and of course we get his arrogance, we get his little quips, but I was always waiting for the bottom to fall out with him. Like I was never confident in his loyalty. I really wasn't. I think it's sad the way it all went down, basically. And, of course, we get some very interesting chapters from all of this. But other than his little smart alecky comments and his constant protest that he is completely loyal to Rob, that Rob is like a brother to him, we really don't get much from him except in John's perspective, where John is distrustful of him and thinks he's basically a douche.
Well,
so does Catelyn. Catelyn does too. She tells Rob, "Don't trust him."
Never trust a Greyjoy. Never trust a Greyjoy.
But he's put in such a harsh position. What does he choose? The family or the basically his kidnappers? I mean, do you go with the Stockholm syndrome, or do you go with the people who are supposed to be your family that are trying to turn their back on you? I mean, he's in a tough position.
Yeah, I mean,
he is in a tough position.
I mean, they didn't even try to find him. They didn't even try to get him back. I mean, I can't imagine, just giving away my child. Now, I don't
see
imagine.
Manderley always talking about he's got to get his son back before he can act, and we never.
Even Tywin.
Yeah, even Tywin over Tyrion. Tyrion gets more love than Balon Greyjoy showed for Theon, basically. I mean, he might as well have been sent to the wall for all the thought and concern that Balon Greyjoy gives him, except for when he can be of use to them. But, Balon didn't tell him to go attack Winterfell either. Technically.
He tried to do it for his family. He tried to show honor, I guess, and it backfired. He didn't. Same thing Rob does with Ed Muir. He doesn't give him enough information of the plan. I mean, so when they do act on their own, they think they're doing a positive, but in turn it actually is harmful to the grand scheme of things. But that's because they didn't know. They didn't have enough information.
There's an excuse me, y'all. Excuse me, my throat is so dry. There is another sentence that stands out to me. Now there was only Shaggy Dog rumbling at the small man, his eyes burning like green fire. What does that remind the two of you of?
Oh, yeah.
Green fire.
Wildfire.
Oh, yeah.
Wildfire. Tyrion.
That's the second time it's used, too. It says it before. I'm trying not to focus too much on that for reasons, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Shaggy Dog, who has black fur, black as night, the nighttime battle, rumbling at the small man who helped officiate the battle of the Blackwater. And his eyes burning like green fire. I mean, that's such a nod right there.
Right, nod to the black. Good point. I didn't catch that either. Good, yeah, that is nice.
Very good.
It's just so many little point, and that's just another thing about George's writing. You can find stuff like this all over the place. After you've read these 5 books, you can go back, read them again, and you'll see little things popping up, little signs of what's going to happen later on. And I just think that it's just wonderful, wonderful writing. I want him to hurry up and bring out Winds of Winter, but I want him to take his time with this, you know. I want him to take his time because I want, you know, things to be just like it is before. I finished reading Winds of Winter, and then I want to come back and read it again and see the signs pointing, you know, in certain directions for certain characters.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, there's so many sentences here that just, and we can't name them all, but there's all you have to do is just go back and reread one more time, and you'll just
turn
find
back.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one more thing. Tyrion says, "Spare me your false courtesies, boy. You do not love me and you do not want me here. I saw an inn outside your walls in the winter town. I'll find a bed there and both of us will sleep easier. For a few coppers, I might even find a comely wench to warm the sheets for me." He feels so unloved, Tyrion, so he turns to prostitution. He turns, I mean that's a sign of saying how unloved he feels. That's why he's so, you know, down with the prostitutes. He doesn't find much love anywhere else. So he turns to prostitution, turns to the prostitutes for comfort. And so it's not just him just being, you know, a lecherous type of person. It's not about lechery, it's about love.
And loneliness.
And loneliness. He's looking for love. I mean, that sentence says it all. I mean, most people just see him as some lech, but it's a specific reason why he's going to those prostitutes. He doesn't find love. He said it right here. You do not love me and you don't want me here. So I just want to go put the money on the desk and find, you know, love with the prostitute. Oh, I'm asking one more time. Are there any more questions in the chat? Any more questions in the chat? Please post them now. Yeah, we're discussing Bran. We're discussing Bran 4, I believe. Yes, Bran 4 of the Game of Thrones. Very influential character. The first character we see outside of the prologue. Very interesting boy. Very interesting boy.
You can definitely see he's already building up to be a big player in the game, in the books. I mean, from the first chapter we get, you know, and then him being pushed out the window, then now this, and you can really see how in depth that Martin has wrote this character specifically. All the little nods. I mean, we've done how many chapters now, and none have been study it like this.
Yeah, none of it. So yeah, there's a lot here. There's a whole bunch here. And another thing, the cook had promised honeycombs. I've never really heard, you know, honey comes from the bees. And we've never really seen bees in our story. So where are they getting honey?
House Beesbury. Really? I mean,
really? They cultivate bees. It's like a bee farm.
Yes.
In Beesbury. Oh, I didn't. Oh, sorry about that. That's my mistake. I didn't.
It's not a mistake. I just know random shit that most people don't about Thrones.
Like, where do they get the bees? Where do they get the bees and the honey from to get the honeycombs? You know, where did that come from?
I mean, it's on their. It's part of their sigil, and I mean, it's mentioned as part of their house.
Okay. Are there any questions in the chat? Any questions? Any comments from our panel? Do we have any other comments from our panel?
Jules still doesn't like Tyrion. Does anybody else enjoy privileges in him for? He's lost in humor. I'm just reading through comments on the in the chat. I don't see anything. Okay, I think it's all I see in the chat here.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bran, do you have any, last comments about this chapter?
Not really, other than that. I mean, we could just keep going and going and going with it because, I mean, Bran is such an influential character throughout the whole story. I mean, it was really a shock to have him not in one of the books. I mean, it's my namesake, so of course I'm pretty in tune with the Bran character anyway. But at the same time, I mean, he is a huge character. I mean, he's getting to see things that we the readers only get to see. So, I mean, I could sit here and talk Bran all day long. So.
Yeah.
Jennifer, what about you?
No, I think I went over everything I had.
And I certainly, I didn't even have much time to write any notes down, but I did, very much enjoy the chapter. I always enjoy these chapters and rereading them and, trying to dissect them every week. I so enjoy that.
Exactly. I do too.
I just wish I had more time, to really bear down and really get up in it, There's so much here, there's so much going on, and we just don't have the time. If there aren't any, I'll give us maybe 5 more minutes, and if there aren't any questions in the chat, then we're going to go ahead and shut it down.
Questions or observations or what have you. I'm really getting a lot out of our reread, because it's always different. It's always different when you go back and reread it.
There's a sentence here.
Go ahead, Ashley. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a sentence here saying the wolves do not like your smell, Lannister. Theon Greyjoy commented. He very much sees himself something different, but beyond the Lannisters and beyond the wolves, so to speak. He's very much the character that's kind of the odd man, not neither here nor there. And it's just it just goes toward the foreshadowing of his story later on. Trying to find who he is and trying to find where he belongs, which is a strange little, and it's such a sad place to be, not really knowing where you belong. And I feel, sorry for him in that regard. Even though he's gonna do some crazy things later on in the story and act so stupidly later on in the story, you have nothing. I can't do anything but feel sorry for Theon,
Oh,
yeah.
Good point. Jules just brought up a good point that I forgot. She said the meat between the teeth also reminded her of Old Nan's story that the others and their dead servants eating the children. It does say that the others fed the dead children to the others, or to their servants. Why would they need to eat? They're already dead. Why would they need to eat dead children in the first place?
Yeah, but
I mean, it made no sense.
Yeah, the others have their own intelligence. The others have their own language. They know what's going on. They're not just mindless zombies.
Yeah, they be speaking that scroff.
Yeah, they have their own way. They proved that right there in the beginning at the prologue about how they were just standing around watching, what's going on.
No, they laugh and joke about it.
Yeah, they were laughing and joking about it.
They get a real kick out of Waymar Royce.
And they probably, sitting back right now in the bush, watching all of this go down, watching all of these battles and all this dead and death. And they're probably, sitting there eating Cherry Garcia ice cream, waiting for the whole mess
Deadpool.
He said he likes fish food. um, yeah, and we get on the show when Mance goes, ever the artist, and he's talking about the way they arranged the dead bodies in this, whatever they do. But yeah, they make quite a little sport of Waymar Royce. They save him and they surround him. They laugh at him. They talk to each other. They really taunt him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's really, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I mean, these zombies, they are not mindless. They have a voice of their own. They have an opinion of their own. They all could have, leaped on him all at once, but they all stood back and watched, like it's if it were a comedy show or something like that. And they have a sense of smell. They can track. They have pets and animals and clothes that they wear. And I mean, it's yeah. These
We got a
people.
grillist in the house.
Hey, Grillis, what's going on?
Did Ashley, did you have a question you wanted to put to us?
Misha, give Sanchez our Hangouts link. Who, what the Hangouts? What the gangbangers? The gangbangers room? What you looking for?
Oh, okay. Moni says Q&A. In Bran stream, what's your fave, your creepiest, and your biggest foreshadow in the story to come?
In Bran's dream. I mean, the dream itself, was just another retelling of what happened to him and how he managed to become, paralyzed. It was just in different words. That to me is was my favorite part. I mean, this the dream as a whole was just him climbing up that window, seeing Cersei and Jamie together and being pushed off. He knew. I mean, once he heard the voices in the tower, he knew he was in trouble. Just like Bran said. So the dream itself, as a whole, was just great to me. I don't have a favorite dream, but that one right there, that one in this chapter, was just perfect, just a perfect retelling of what happened to him and what his in his mind, trying to make sense of what happened.
And I think what I said earlier to me, this is just the way, sometimes I read stuff and maybe somebody doesn't see it the way I see it, but we've already got images that Tyrion has been compared to a gargoyle, but he sees the lions change to gargoyles, which says to me, we've been presented, even Bran is the one, when he sees Jamie, he thinks to himself, Jamie looks like everything a king should look like. And Cersei's very beautiful. But really, on the inside, they are terrible, terrible, disfigured, horrible people. But then Tyrion is the one everybody thinks is a little monster, but he's actually the only one that's got any kind of, even though in the books it's very slight compared to the show, but he's the only one who does anything decent, who has any kind of decency at this point in our story. And the fact that it specifically brings up the gargoyle when we've had the imagery of Tyrion being compared to a gargoyle and them being compared to, beautiful lions. But in actuality, it's the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Bran says he lost his mic, so he's pretty much done for tonight. Was seeing as we've lost part of our panel, you want to go ahead and put an end to it for tonight, and we can try to get things back on track for next week.
Yes, yeah, that's fine. And next week we've got Edard again.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah, Edard. Who's doing Edard next week?
I don't know. Do you want to do Edard? Do you want me to do Edard? It doesn't matter.
No, no. It's gonna be so busy for me.
I don't mind taking it, and it's not even very long. It's not even, but just a few pages. I'll get this. No problem.
Thank you for that.
All right, no problem.
Yeah. You can if need be. Oh, I can if need be. Oh, okay. Bran said he would try it.
Okay, cool. That's fine.
Yeah,
Bran, you can get it, and I'll do my little notes like I always do anyway. And with it, yeah. So everything will be good. Well, be good. We'll all come together.
For a few more weeks until I'm done with my filming.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then
you're talking about your have and have not videos, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's 2 shows back to back, and I got another video to make. So
right, I know that's a lot on you during this season when you're doing those 2 shows. And y'all, Misha has some really good videos on. If y'all watch Have and Have Not, she's been trying to get me into it. I do watch her videos. I do watch her videos. It just is not on Netflix or any thing that I have yet, but it will be. I know it will be.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're gonna go ahead and end it for tonight. Thank you all so much for joining us here tonight, and we will be back next week. And we're doing Edard. The next chapter is Edard. Is it Edard 3 or Edard 4? I'm not quite sure. Let me check.
I think it's Edard 4.
It's the 25th chapter. Let me see.
Don't quote me. Don't quote me.
3, 4. Oh, I think it's Edard 5. Edard 5.
There we go.
Yes, he has the most chapters in this book, which is a foreshadowing right there. How does he have so many chapters? It may be because he may not be around for so long. So even that is a foreshadowing. Having so many chapters just for one character. I think he had like 14 chapters. So that's a foreshadowing right there for Eddard Stark. We're doing Eddard 5 next week. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for the people in the chat. I'll be, popping in and out of the hangouts, and periodically during the week. And I hope to see all of you. Jennifer, you want to do your outro?
Okay, I'm Lady Wolverton. I have a little channel called the Lady Wolverton's Den, but I haven't done anything on it in a really long time. But I was thinking about doing something on it maybe soon. And everybody just calls me Jen. I'm on Facebook, Jennifer Wolverton. I'm on Twitter, Jennifer Wolverton 1976. Yes, that's the year I was born. Yes, I am old. That's okay too. All right. So good to have everybody in the hangout, people I haven't seen in a minute, new people. Ashley, good to have you. Moni, good to see you. Grillis, so good to see you. And everybody who came to the chat as well. Alicia, who popped in, Jules Elizabeth, Stacy, Fred, Uncle's Daddy Targaryen. Yeah, that always makes me laugh when I say that out loud. We had so many people pop in. Amanda was here tonight. We just thank y'all so much. And yeah, we'll see y'all next week.
Yes, thank you all so much for joining us, and we will be back next time to discuss Eddard 5. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.